Good evening and welcome to the Monday, August 22nd, 2022 meeting of the school committee. I would invite those who are here to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I do not see anybody here in the studio for public comments, so we'll move right into reports because we're moving the introduction to the Hopkinton Public Library Director, Nancy Hill, to September. So, all right, it goes to you.
So we're going to have to do it this way because it will not reload.
Oh.
I should never have left it. All right, and that's very unfortunate because it looks so much nicer in blue. All right, anyway, so this is the superintendent's report from Monday, August 22nd, 2022. As we all know, we are heading back to school next week, so faculty and staff will report on Monday, August 29th, and students will be back on Wednesday, the 31st. School start times, this went out to families this afternoon, and as you know, people are probably wondering why are these start times changing. When we were in negotiations with the Hopkinton Teachers Association, we realized that we needed about 5 minutes more each day in all of our schools for time on learning this year, and the same will happen for next year. So what you see there are the drop-off times, the school start times, and the school end times. So our secondary schools will all begin at 8 o'clock, and our elementary schools will all begin at 8:55. Hopkins will allow students to unload at 8:35, Elmwood 8:40, and Marathon 8:45, and a lot of that really does just have to do with supervision. As you can see in the lower right-hand corner, the teacher workday begins officially by contract at 8:45. So depending upon space availability and who's there to watch children, we are able to take the kids in, and obviously the kids at Hopkins are more mature than the students at Marathon, so we can trust them with a little bit more independence for 10 minutes. As always, I show you the net intake on students, and today we are at 110 students. I'm sorry, 118 students. So you can see the kids who have exited from each grade level. I know that Lisa Cardy, who's does our student data system, and Georgette just reconciled these numbers, so they're pretty spot on. All right, and then I had promised an update on the district improvement plan. Just so you know, it's under construction. The administrative team met last week for 2 days at the Warren Conference Center. We were there on Tuesday and Wednesday. I think we made a lot of progress on this, but I will just show you sort of where we are. One of the things that we had talked about was adding a vision statement and changing our mission statement. For many years, for as long as I've been here in Hopkinton, the mission has been learn, create, and achieve together. And while we liked its simplicity and we liked its messaging, we weren't sure that it differentiated Hopkinton from many of the other communities across the state or across the nation. So we started working on these statements that you see here. The vision that we are currently working on was originally written: the Hopkinton Public School District aspires to be a community of educational innovation where children are challenged and inspired to reach their fullest potential, afforded the agency to define selfhood, and celebrated for their human kindness. And in the blue highlighting here, you can see the kinds of things that we are talking about. We're wondering about that definition of innovation, and what does that really mean if we say we're a school district of innovation. And then we also talked about the idea of kids being afforded the agency to define selfhood, and we were all in agreement that we really want kids to be able to become whatever it is that they want to become, not to be sort of stigmatized or stereotyped or, in any way feel that they have to conform to something. But at the same time, we weren't sure that selfhood was a word that would appeal to everyone in the community. And we wanted people to understand that we weren't the people sort of guiding that, but rather providing sort of that fertile ground for kids to make those decisions about who they were in the process of becoming. The mission statement, when we went into the retreat, read, the Hopkinton Public Schools ensures equitable access for all students to academically challenging curricula in a community that supports social, emotional, behavioral learning, ultimately guiding young adults to create their own pathways, engage in citizenship, and foster respect for self and others. And on that one, we talked a little bit about what do we mean by behavioral learning, and we talked a little bit about engaging in local and global citizenship. So those were the conversations we were having. We have also typically published our Hiller values, and we had a very long conversation about, while we like those values, we're not sure that if you are at the Elmwood School and you consider yourself an Elmwood Eagle, that you have an understanding really of what it means to be a Hiller. So those might be coming out of there. They are lovely and appropriate for our high school age students. Just so you know what the plan looks like now, we have just really isolated these buckets of importance to us: planning for enrollment growth, making sure that we meet every student's needs, and building a community of respect and collaboration. And we have kind of redefined the rationales for those. And that's really where we are at this point in time. So a lot of good work, but more work to come.
Questions?
I have just one question about the memo that went out today.
Sure.
With the start times and the construction hours. I noticed that it was 9 to 3 was the agreement with the town, and of course our middle and high school drivers and our middle and high school buses will be getting out at 2:35. Are we able to make the turn through construction to get back by 3:15?
That is a huge question for us. So we did have that conversation when we were meeting with the town, and their concern, of course, is that they are bringing construction personnel and all of that equipment and people to redirect traffic and all of that onto a job site, and to limit the day to 5.5 hours feels constraining. But we did point out to them that if we have a school that gets out at 2:35 and we sort of let all of those buses go, if those buses are late in getting back to our elementary schools, then that leaves Mrs. Bolello and Mrs. DeBow and Mrs. Carver in a school where the teacher contract allows them to leave at the end of the school day at 3:30. So we can't have Mrs. DeBow standing there with 600 K-1 students, trying to get them to board buses that aren't quite there yet, because that will end in chaos. So our agreement was that we would try it for the first 2 days of school, for the 29th, the 31st and the 1st, with the kids, and then we would have all of Labor Day weekend to kind of revisit that. So we did make a plan with them to get back together and talk about whether or not the 3 o'clock extension was working, or if 2:30 would be more appropriate.
Thank you.
And one other thing to add, all of the officers that are directing traffic know to give priority to the buses. So if they see a bus in line, they will move that line to get the bus through.
Okay.
So that's important.
And even if there's an area where a street is blocked off to through traffic, the buses are able to travel that space as well. So they're not really subject to that winding detour. So we're hoping that will work.
If not, I'm sure we'll hear about it.
Yes, I'm sure we will. And to be fair, bus routes are always sort of notoriously slow in those first few days. You've got kids who are getting on the wrong buses. You've got kids who are very slow in getting up because they don't realize it's their stop. The drivers are learning the route, so it does take quite a bit of time for the first couple of weeks.
Kindergartners have never ridden a bus. I remember getting my son on a kindergarten bus with
Yes.
carrying him onto the bus.
Exactly.
And it did seem like last year we still had a number of students who were not on the buses, perhaps as a spillover from COVID in the year before. Are not to throw this out offhand, but are our numbers more on track for a typical year with bus ridership, do we know? Okay.
Yeah, our numbers are more typical, yes.
Okay.
I think that trepidation in the beginning of last year, as you said, to be fair to parents, was still COVID related.
Right,
But parents towards the end of this year, and we're certainly seeing it to start the year, seem more comfortable putting their student on a bus.
Excellent. I've seen a lot of advertisement from Hopkinton Public School for Connolly bus drivers. I'm hoping that's good that we've brought in some new drivers to drive all the buses that we have planned.
We have a full fleet of drivers to start the year. The big caveat always is whether we have sub-drivers, because, you know, as any of us know, there's absences and that happens. So.
I'm glad you said that. I've received a lot of questions about busing, so I'm so happy that you updated the parents on that. I also wanted to say I love the wording that we put in about personhood, empowering each student to be whatever it is they want to be. I think that's really wonderful, and I don't see that in a lot of districts, so I'm happy that we have that in there. That's it.
I did take us on a tangent, but I also did like...
It was a worthwhile tangent, yes.
All right, so that moves into me. Yes, okay. So payroll warrant S23003 has been approved. Operating warrants 23006 and 23007 have been approved. Copy of the warrants is included in the packet. And then on August 8th, 2022, the executive session minutes of June 9th, 2022 were approved and released, and June 2022 and July 21st, 2022 were approved and released with redactions. And then, are there any liaison reports?
I have one. Well, we kind of have two, actually, but if you want to do policy, I can do the SBC. The ESBC2 met on the 9th, whenever that was. It was after last school committee meeting, though, I think. And we had a presentation from the designer, Perkins Eastman, yes. And they are very forward-thinking in that we were talking about public forums and making sure communication with the community, what is is happening, and they already had a timeline in place that they presented to the committee about when they wanted to hold public forums, when they wanted to host informational meetings for the community. So they were very forward thinking on that, and I think that's probably the big takeaway from it. They talked a lot about the sort of beginnings of the project, which is, minutia. If anybody is more interested in that, they can. It's things about, not minutia, but I guess they're kind of big things, but, things about traffic and design and all, cost caps and exclusions and all that. But I think the big piece was that they came in very prepared, not like this microphone. And the mic's not ready for tonight. But they came in very prepared with ways to inform and keep the community as knowledgeable as possible about the way the project's going, which was really, I think, everything that we talked about at the school committee meeting that evening, they were ahead of, we came with questions and they had them all taken care of as far as that was concerned. So, so that bodes well for the designer choice, and I think it's off to a good start.
Great.
And we also had a policy meeting, if you want to do policy meeting.
Sure. Yep. Policy subcommittee met with two main policies in our crosshairs. One was the financial assistance policy and the procedures and related policies. It's sort of a network of policies. The other one was revisiting the equity policy. And we had some really good discussion. We've done some groundwork on the financial assistance policy, and I believe it's coming back September 1st.
Yes.
So we are trying to scope out a pilot and what that might look like, and what that might entail, and any complications that might arise from the thinking that we have on the pilot. We did take into account both Leah's thoughts on more tiers of aid, and also, looking at, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. The question that you raised, Holly, last time.
always have a lot of questions, so.
I mean, so anyway, we had a really good discussion. I think we just need to kind of make sure that our thoughts are feasible and implementable, and that's why we want to regroup. We're meeting again on Thursday. And the equity policy we read through, and we're hoping to bring that back probably either the first or the meeting after, because the first is pretty full now, so it'll probably be the 15th-ish or around then.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, then that moves us into new business item A, which is the wetlands replication contract, and that is you, Susan.
Thank you. So we used Gale Associates for the design, engineering, and bidding for the wetlands restoration. This is a restoration at the Hopkinton High School. The construction documents and bidding was handled through Gale. In the end, we ended up with 5 vendors that submitted bids. You can see the vendors within your packet. The apparent low bidder did not satisfy the requirements that were outlined within the bid, the contractor qualification statement. So they were considered not a responsible and responsive bidder and not moved forward. The next bid is from Flynn Enterprises, and Gale did their due diligence on them, and Gale is recommending the award to Flynn at a cost of $126,887. As a reminder, the appropriation for this is $100,000, so that leaves the bid $26,000 over budget. And this is what we're running into with all of our bids. The prices for this really is reflective of the cost of the plantings themselves. And we are looking into using the athletic revolving for that remaining bid overage. When you look at the Mass General Law for the athletic revolving, it does allow facilities for expenditures out of this. But we are working to get an answer from DESI. If not, the building use revolving certainly is applicable.
Do you have it readily available when the appropriation was, when the 100,000 was appropriated for this project, the date? I can't remember.
It's in multiple dates.
Over the course of time, yeah.
So
'Cause it's an old one, right?
40,000 was appropriated years ago.
Right.
We only just received the additional 60,000 at this May town
This
meeting.
past May, okay.
So we put it out to bid right away. The intention is to have the plantings installed this fall.
Is there any leeway on the type of planting? Like, is there any cost? Can we play with the cost by the type of planting, or is it dictated by wetland compliant?
It's dictated by
Yeah.
wetlands.
I mean, this is kind of outstanding, isn't it?
Had it been done in 1999,
Yep.
it probably would not have
Right.
cost this amount of money.
So, I mean, it's just gonna keep going up, right? So
It is.
I think that the fact that it's not only, but that we've only seen a $26,000, that seems so bizarre to say, but I mean, this has been this is a long time coming. We're almost 30 years? Yeah.
In
So-
this, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, I'm done. I'm done. So I'm done.
This will meet the entirety of it.
It will.
Okay.
Was there a significant explanation for the $160,000 span between the second lowest bid and the highest bid? And that's a big jump. 284.
You know, unfortunately, this is what you're seeing in the bidding atmosphere. Sometimes vendors will just put in an amount, and if they get it, great. So when you have a disparity like this, sometimes the vendors just don't need the business.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Is there somebody who would like to make a motion related to authorizing?
I'd like to move to authorize the Director of Finance to execute the contract with Flynn Enterprises for the wetland replication project.
Okay, so a motion by Jen,
I'll second.
second by Holly. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. And it is unanimous and passes. Thank you for
Thank you.
taking care of that.
It'd be awesome if it happened.
I know.
Inside of
Now I
30.
have to keep
Inside
talking
of
every
30.
year.
It'd be great.
That brings us to new business item B, which is marathon funding. And that's you, Dr. Kaplan.
Thank you. So I'm very grateful for the turnout at special town meeting last week. And as you know, special town meeting approved the expenditure of $850,000, or at least the movement of it from our stabilization to the marathon construction account. And so we also need you as a school committee to approve the spending of that money, because that money falls under your purview.
I just want to echo the thanks to everyone who came out to special town meeting, and also to the HPTO for providing the childcare on site to allow parents to go who needed to have
There were a
childcare.
lot of parents, like couples there. Pretty rare.
Yeah. It was a record meeting quorum, I feel like, and a record duration.
More than double the number of
Those are
people
related.
who had been at town meeting in May
It was
appeared for this.
fantastic,
So
yeah.
many people wanted to stand up for education in this community.
It
and
was
that
great.
makes me feel
Especially for the
wonderful.
little kids.
Yeah,
yes.
for our little kids. Yeah.
And I also feel really thankful for our town partners and other elected officials and boards, the Appropriations Committee, the Capital Improvements Committee, our town moderator. All these people were on summer vacation, and the select board, our town CFO, we were very lucky to have everybody rally to support us. So
It's great. So,
I'll make a motion.
all right.
I will request the school committee to authorize the additional spending of school stabilization monies, which were transferred to the marathon construction account for the marathon school addition.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Or sorry, that was for consideration. I need
Yeah.
to make the motion. I move to approve the additional spending of school stabilization monies, which were transferred to the marathon construction account for the marathon school addition.
So a motion by Amanda,
I'll still
and a
second.
second by Holly. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
All right, and that passes, and look forward to being able to get that up and supporting our youngest learners. So
That's exciting.
brings us into old business item A, which is the superintendent's goals.
Okay. So I don't know if you would like me to walk you through them all, but what I've done for you tonight is I have highlighted in the red font places where I have added things in after we had discussed them. And I know that's very small on that screen. I think I did share it with you just a moment ago, so if you take a look in your email, I hope you will find it there so that you're able to read that along with me. So the first goal is the one where I really want to start looking at K-6 math. I mean, we've done a very good job, I think, of ensuring a guaranteed and viable curriculum across the K-5 ELA. We're very solid in things like phonics and phonemic awareness and guided reading and all of those pieces that make up a very good reading program. So what we're looking at now is doing the same in math, and I have added number 7 in response to Leah's request for ensuring that kids who are diagnosed with dysgraphia have some kind of intervention to ensure that their struggles with writing are not impeding those kinds of questions in math that require kids to write either paragraphs or even just to be able to compose numbers and those pieces. So what I would be doing with that is working with the K-5 math director as well as the middle school math CTL to ensure that those supports are in place. Typically, if a kid has an IEP with that identified, that's there, but this may be even larger than our kids who are just diagnosed with dysgraphia, but how are we ensuring that good writing is taking place across math classes? Okay. All right, and the second one is that while we've been doing all of this work on reading, it's probably time for us to take a look carefully at writing. And so the K-5 ELA director will be working with all of the K-5 teachers to really redesign the writing curriculum. And in grades 6 to 10, we have that commitment to the implementation of disciplinary literacy. And I know what we're saying about ensuring that that happens in grades 11 and 12. But I feel like at this point in time, Mr. Bishop and Mr. Lefebvre, our two principals in those buildings, are really prepared, I think, and they've prepared their teachers to look at things, especially in the content areas at the middle school and the content areas in the high school, but in grades 9 and 10. It doesn't mean that it won't happen in 11 and 12, and hopefully some of those things will happen organically. But The one thing in here, I think that Leah was concerned about is how are we ensuring that those same children with sort of physical and brain-based writing challenges are getting access to that curriculum. What I've done here for you is I've attached a link so that you can see that the self-regulated strategy development and a lot of the pieces that we already use in writing address those issues. Because in terms of writing, I mean, that's been something that kids have struggled with for years. So it's almost as if ELA teachers anticipate that in an ELA classroom where they don't necessarily anticipate it in a math classroom. All right, and moving to, I don't know if I missed anything in the third.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I had any.
I don't see any red.
No, but that one I think that I pretty much just left alone. And once again, I do feel like we have to start merging the work that we're doing in diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice, our culturally responsive practices, and social emotional learning, because they're seeping into each other. Maybe a good example is when we just had our administrative retreat. You know that we've been working with that black print company through DESE for the last couple of years, and we'll continue on with that now. They have a woman working for them whose name is Lisette, and she was one of the folks who had come out to the district, I think we talked about this last year, to look for culturally responsive practices just in our classrooms. Like, what are you seeing when you walk in? What is the classroom environment? She did an amazing presentation on culturally responsive practices, and there are sort of 5 pillars of how you know that that is happening in schools. And one is that you can walk into classrooms and see teachers with particular behaviors or particular teacher moves or particular pedagogical strategies where that is happening. And so she did a really nice presentation for us on all of the pillars, and we were able to meet in small groups and talk about that. And I've gone a long way to say that that is part of the DEI work, but also part of the work that Jen Suker does in culturally responsive practice. So they're merging, and I think that we have to get to a place where we understand how all of those pieces fit together. So while we're still doing a lot of that work and looking at, are we hiring people of greater diversity whenever we can, all of those pieces, the big thing for me is aligning that work, so that the 3 people that we've hired to do the work have an understanding of working cooperative and collaboratively, and what each one of them kind of owns and shares. All right, so moving to the work on enrollment growth, and really it's not just enrollment growth, it's about building use and building expansion, and what is our district going to look like in 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, because I think that that's really important. This resulting in a written 3 to 5 year plan was there before, but I highlighted it because I think that it's something that the committee was sort of asking for. In all of these key process benchmarks, one of the things that we reference frequently is the work that DRA had done back in, I think, December of 2018 or 2019. And I think that that campus planning study is important because it does a nice job of highlighting for us what our buildings currently look like. So you can see that even though we may have gymnasiums that are well suited to the number of students, we have cafeterias that are much too small, or we have library or media center spaces that are also maybe too small for our current student populations. So I've added to that I need to conduct additional research regarding elementary and middle school grade configurations. It's no secret that we now have an elementary school building committee that's going to be looking at, do we want to have a 2-3 school, or do we want to replace Elmwood with a 2-3-4 school? And then the question becomes, what happens with the Hopkins school? What happens to the middle and high school? So all of that has to be done, I think, through the lens of research. Hopkinton is probably very unlikely ever to be a school district that has kind of those K-8 neighborhood schools. I mean, we've made a commitment very long ago, and I think even when we were building Marathon, that we were going to be a community that brought all of our kids together as early as K, and that they would go through school together. And so if that's the case, does it make sense to have a 5-6 school? What other districts do that? What are the advantages and disadvantages to that? Should you pull the 6th grade out of Hopkins, out of the middle school and move that class into Hopkins? And then what work would need to be done to the Hopkins school if that were the situation? If that's not the situation, then you would you would build a 2-3 school and you would keep 4-5, but you would still need to do work on the Hopkins school because we see that those numbers are peaking in, pretty imminent school years. That may mean that at the Hopkins school, we are turning art rooms into classrooms, which we have historically done almost everywhere else in the district when times have gone bad. So if you remember the old center school, art on a cart existed for probably a decade, and now poor Mrs. DeBow has art on a cart once again in a brand spanking new school. Number 3, to employ 20 minutes at the start of each school committee meeting to update the committee on the Elmwood project and to bring forth data or information for public consumption, just in sort of dribs and drabs. Number 7, to help the school committee understand how enrollment and grade configurations will be handled logistically, so that you understand what are the transportation needs, the cafeteria and food service needs, programming, and more. And then down here in the products benchmark, I also added in the dates that you were just talking about a few minutes ago, Jen. So these are the most recent dates that we got at that meeting on August 9th. So September 19th, the Community Forum number 1. That's a kickoff meeting. And what they've decided to look at is the possibility of doing some of these virtually and some of these in person, because what we're tending to find is that if you do things virtually, you get viewers. If you do them in person, sometimes people are sort of strapped without babysitting and just the hecticness of homework and bathing and dinner and all of those things that happen in the households at that hour of the night.
Will all these be recorded, so parents that are unable to make either, they can watch
And
it?
that would be the hope, that we would be able to record them so people could go back to them.
Yeah,
Yes.
great.
Dr. Hannah, can you possibly enlarge that?
Sure can.
Control.
My glasses are maxed out.
I was like, you're going over.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Is that better?
Great.
Okay.
And are all of these forums for the public? I didn't hear that. That's not where I walked away understanding from the meeting. I thought that some were for teachers and some were for students, and it's like there were different populations. Or are those in addition?
I understood that these were for everyone. Is that your understanding as
Yes.
well?
Yeah,
that's what I
so
thought.
some of these, they will do twice. So they'll do right after school for teachers.
Oh,
And
that's
then
great.
they will do again in the evening
Okay.
for parents.
Oh,
That's really excellent.
So that may be where you heard staff
That
and,
is.
and
that's
then
it.
community.
Thank you. That makes a lot more sense.
And that's why they really are really amazingly organized in this regard, because they were taking into account for the teachers and their time and when they would be available, and they're trying to make it so that folks who are still sort of not quite excited about being in a room with a lot of other people for the forums, because we usually pack them in 100 people, but that, like they want to be really mindful of that, so they really laid it out they got very structured with how they wanted it to happen.
It's also inclusion and accessibility, because not every
Right.
family has the ability to be in an in-person
Yep.
meeting. Right. So I think it's wonderful. We're trying to get everybody.
That's great. It's nice to see what the dates are so that people can start to think about this and generate some buzz.
Yes, October 4th is the second one, outlining existing conditions. November 2nd, we'll be talking about the vision and grade configurations. December 7th is to talk about traffic, which we always
an
talk
issue?
about here in Hopkins. And then in January, we would be asking the school committee to look at a decision on grade configuration. January 24th is actually a community forum for the preferred option. And then in mid-February, the building committee would be making a decision on a preferred option. At least this is the way these numbers, dates and times are looking now.
So is that looking for the school committee to make a decision on grade configuration ahead of the January 24th on the preferred option?
Yes, so that you can make a
Yep.
recommendation.
Okay.
And is that I thought I heard that say that school committee would make two important votes. I thought one was the ed plan. Is that grade configuration? The education plan, or is that different?
No, I think that is different. So
Okay.
eventually you have to vote before something goes off to the MSBA. Both you and I think the select board as
That's
well.
what they said,
Yes.
yeah. And then we vote sometime in February, March on the final.
February, I think,
February,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And are these slides on, maybe it would help if their presentation was maybe on our school committee website, because they did, again, a great job of laying out timelines and really saying, with the ultimate goal of beginning construction on, I can't remember, 20 January of next, is that right? I gotta go back and look at it. My notes say January, but that sounds wrong to me, so I might have typed it in wrong. But in their presentation, they had the anticipated construction date and everything worked back from that. So they had the goal, and then here's how we're gonna inform everyone, here's where we need to meet, here's when we meet all these deadlines for MSBA. So if it's not there, maybe we could put it there. I don't need.
Yes, these dates, I don't know if they talked about this in that, because we currently have, we have a working group, we have a public relations group, we have an educational leadership group, and then we have the larger ESBC too. So sometimes it becomes challenging for me where I heard all of this. Was everyone in the room or not, I guess is the question. But we are currently working on a flyer, and the flyer will have these dates on it. And so when you have something like a back to school night or kindergarten orientation, or this information can continue to go out to the public, so somebody walks away with a piece of paper in their hand or a QR code, so that these things become easy to access as we go.
I couldn't, in all fairness, read all of the
yes.
words.
I'm sorry.
But I just was wondering if your goal included, so if between now and the 2026 or 2027 or 26 or whenever the school is done.
Oh, when it's done, okay, when it's done, sorry.
When we have crunches in our schools, if and when, per the projections, how we might address those. Just being prepared with sort of a plan B in the event that we hit some of the projected peaks with our existing facilities while we're working on building capacity.
Yes, and I hoped, and maybe I wasn't clear enough here, that would do that, help the school committee understand how enrollment and grade configurations will be handled logistically. Because that enrollment piece it's a wild card, but we do have a good sense of where are we today, and the numbers are kind of following in a lot of ways what was predicted by, I think, both Arthur Wagman and the MSBA. Arthur Wagman was just a smidge under the MSBA, but we do see the kids coming. I mean, you see that we planned enrollment for 110 kids, and we're at 118. And we also have to remember that when we look at Dr. Wagman's numbers, those are numbers that could be in our school prior to the end of the school year. So we've hit that number, and it's August.
And it's going to go up for sure. Between
Very
now.
likely going up, yes. So even though we say it's a wild card, I think we have to believe in the numbers. And so we have to start planning for what's going to, we've said many times that right now in grade 4, we have class sizes that are at 25. And so what will that mean when those students get to grade 5? And what will it mean when our current third graders join them at Hopkins, and how many other kids will join them? So we have to be thinking about where they're going to, where and how they're going to eat lunch. How many lunches will Mrs. Bolello have to serve there? Will we have to expand those kids from the cafeteria a little bit into the gymnasium? Like we did that in COVID, we may be doing it again, depending on the numbers that we have.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of looking just at the agenda, we are not looking for a vote on this tonight?
No, we don't have to. I'm happy to take additional feedback. I mean, I tried to incorporate what I thought we talked about last time, but if there are other pieces, I'm happy to do that too.
I was only looking that we had not called out having a vote on it tonight. Yeah, more than. But do people have other suggestions, other questions?
No, I think that you did an amazing job integrating all of the pieces from the conversation that we had last week. And added the details that we didn't even know we were gonna have last meeting. And so I think these are great. I'm very comfortable with these. I don't know about anybody else, but yeah.
I am comfortable with them as well. I do think we probably should wait to vote on them until the next meeting.
Yes.
But it would
And
be
then Leah will be here as well.
Leah will be here as well. And
And maybe when we vote those, we can also look at the indicators for your, we should probably pare that
Sure.
list down.
Yep.
We typically
Yes.
forget to do that, or we just started doing that.
all right, thank you.
Yeah, we do, we pare down the indicators so that it
Right.
focuses.
We started doing that, yeah, that's a great idea.
All right, so that brings us into any future agenda items that people want to throw out for the next bit.
Yeah, I would like to talk about bullying within the schools, and I know that there was a committee that was formed prior to me being on the committee. Well, almost every committee was formed prior to me being on the committee. But I don't know, I've talked to a lot of parents have questions about our processes and what it looks like, and I think that there's a possibility that we could be more transparent or relay additional information to the community. A lot of people didn't know about the form that we have. Some people don't know about that we have a bias form now, and I just think that the more information we give to parents and to communities and to the school, the better we can look at what our bullying numbers are, and that's of course all connected to mental health, which is my favorite thing to talk about when we talk about little kids and big kids. So like from my perspective, the only numbers that I've seen as a committee member were from last year, where we had 15 total and 8 were substantiated. And based on just like my research and my work, that's extremely low, and I'm happy about that. But the research I've done, the aggregated data from all the studies I've read, says about, in any given year, 20% of kids in a school district have experienced bullying. So for us, that would be 1% of our student population, and that's incredible. But I also think that maybe there's some reason that some people aren't reporting bullying instances, or they feel like they're not empowered to do so, or they don't understand the process. So I don't know how, I know that this has been discussed in prior years, but just for, we have so many new people in the community, we have a growing diversity, we have, a population that may not necessarily understand what we do. So I just like it to be something that we talk about and present to the community. If anybody else agrees, I would.
So
I don't-
looking for, just trying to tease out the
Yeah.
agenda piece, looking for a report of some kind.
Yeah, I would love to
And some
have
communication going out. to
Yeah,
the
where we
community.
are, how we disseminate this information to parents, and just kind of a debrief for new families or even old families that have been here, how this process works, what it looks like when a bullying instance is investigated, how we do that, and how it's substantiated or not. Like, these are things that I as a parent would be very interested in, and I'm sure, a lot of other families would be as well. Particularly as diversity grows, we know that bullying typically grows as well,
Yeah, I would be happy to present that information to the committee.
Oh, thank you so much,
Great.
Dr. Kavanaugh.
Thank you.
Could I add something onto that? Just because as you're talking, I think that the hard part for a lot of parents is that, and for me, is that bullying is narrowly defined by the state.
Yeah.
But maybe in addition to sort of the process, it might be good to hear what the schools do just to try to foster a very inclusive atmosphere. I mean, we hear about it in pieces all the time in your reports, but if if we're going to present sort of the process to report it, also present like what is already going on to try to minimize this, so that when parents hear that this isn't a bullying incident as defined by the state, that might be true even if there was something that happened with their
Right.
child and another child. Here's what is happening to try to keep these instances from occurring in the first place. That might be good
I
stuff
love
to
that.
partner with.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think the piece of just because it doesn't meet the legal definition of
Exactly.
bullying does not mean that something wrong
Right.
was not done to a child or
Right.
something that
Exactly.
is
But
hurtful.
how do we record that? Like,
Right.
if we're not
Right.
meeting the legal definition, does the school record things that they think are bullying but maybe not legally so? And how do people access that information? And how do we deal with it at an elementary level versus a high school level, right? There's going to be very different ways of approaching that. Thank you.
Great. Okay, and that brings us uncharacteristically ahead of schedule into items by consensus.
Okay. As superintendent, I recommend the school committee approve the items by consensus as outlined in your agenda.
Motion for that?
Yes, so moved.
So motion by Jen, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Holly, all those in favor?
Yes.
Aye, and that carries, and that brings us into look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Jen, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Holly, all those in favor?
Yes.
Aye, and we are adjourned then at 7:45. Our next two meetings are September 1st and September 15th. They will both occur here at the HCAM studios. Thank you all for tuning in, and good luck to all of our students and to our teachers in starting school next week.